Hey everyone, welcome back to the Yoga of Business. We have arrived at what I am calling the final episode of this season, which is funny because I first posted the introduction to this season on August 1st of 2024, and it is July 17th of 2025 as I'm recording this final episode. So, the first thing that I just want to share with all of you is that sometimes projects take a little bit more time than we originally thought. And a lot of times with these creations, I don't know, for my fellow yoga teachers out there, my fellow just like wellness people, sometimes with these creations that we have that, like my podcast is such a small piece of all the things that I'm doing with yoga, with retreats, and all of this. But it is no less important. And it has been just filed away in the back of my mind. I had like all the episodes done back this fall. And then one thing led to another. I actually got pneumonia this fall. So my track record for having random sicknesses in the fall is not super good. That's how I filmed season 2 originally. It was when I had COVID a couple years ago. So anyway, I'm just chuckling because I have learned and I just kept telling myself, I'll finish it when it's time. And that's what I love about projects like this because there's no one banging down my door telling me I have to get this done. It's just me being like, hey, I want to finish this podcast. And honestly, I think I've really saved the best for last. So, if just a quick note, like if you're watching this on YouTube, I am doing a video in line with this audio. Just know that the rest of the episodes of this season 3 of the Yoga of Business are all on whatever podcasting app that you subscribe to. So, definitely check those out if you're catching this as a final episode on any platform, YouTube, podcast app, whatever. Hi, I'm really glad you're here. And I'll just give like a quick, brief overview of what we've been talking about because I think it's important because what I'm covering in this final episode are two of the most nuanced planet, or we'll call them planetary energies that we're going to talk about this season. And honestly, there is so much depth to be covered here that I'm going to have a hard time just reeling this in and relating this just to business because these two planets have, oh my gosh, there's such a big part of reading one's Jyotish blueprint, so to speak. And yeah, so let's just dive in. Okay, so what have we been talking about all season? So Vedic astrology, which is more common vernacular, aka Jyotish, which is the Sanskrit word for, some might call it the science of light. It really is so much more than a newspaper horoscope. We are not predicting the future. Okay, so we are looking at planetary energies, planetary bodies, like the actual ones up in the sky that people, human beings, have been fascinated with since the beginning of time, including cosmic events such as eclipses, which we're going to be talking about today. Uh, just imagine like being a human being like thousands of years ago, and then all of a sudden, like one day, in the middle of the day, it gets completely dark, and all of the animals react to it, and all of the you're like, who turned the lights out? Right? Human beings have been fascinated by the cosmos since the beginning of time. And for us to be able to use this system that was created by the ancient yogis and rishis of India, influenced by lots of other places around the world, like I imagine teachings traveled through Egypt and Greece and Rome and all of these places. So all of these traditions came together, and in India, we call it Jyotish. And a lot of the Jyotish teachings that we learn from, especially some of the nakshatras and other things that are really specific to the astrology of India that we're talking about, these have been around since, well, a very long time. There's lots of stories in the Vedas, which are the original and the oldest spiritual texts in the world, the oldest written spiritual texts in the world. And, the Vedas were written down at a certain point, but arguably they were practiced and memorized and passed down far longer than the moment that they were written down. Okay. So we've established this is not some new age way of looking at the cosmos. This is really, really old. And it's honestly, it's an honor to even be talking about this and be studying this. It's one of my favorite pathways that my yoga journey has led me down. And I'm just happy you're here with me. So we have taken these 7 primary planets of Jyotish and we've broken each one down into and talking about, okay, how can I use this planetary energy in my role in business? Whether you own your own business, whether you're starting a business, or whether you work for someone else and you want to have a more enlightened way of living and being, doesn't matter. Wherever you are, we're all in the business of something, right? There's actually 5 primary planets and 2 luminaries. So our luminaries being sun and moon. And so we've covered all 7 of these. These are the 7 primary planets that are associated with the days of the week. So if you haven't gathered this yet, that's one of my personal favorite ways to use planetary energies is to really tune in with their symbols on their given day of the week. So like I was just telling a group of students in a 300-hour yoga training this past week, Tuesdays are Mars's day, and Mars is the planet of action. And I'm a Mars girl because I'm an Aries ascendant. So for me, Tuesdays are all about action, action, action. That is the day when I get stuff done on my to-do list. Wednesday is Mercury's day, so I can go either way. I can get stuff done on Wednesdays. Like I can really crank through stuff. A lot of times it's when I send out newsletters because Mercury is our planetary communicator. Thursdays, which is the day I'm filming this right now, this is Jupiter's day. So this is an amazing day to study. For me, this is not only a chance to film something, but to reflect, because as I'm talking to you, I'm reflecting on the planets as well. And I really love tapping into spiritual teachings on a day like today. Sunday is the sun's day, obviously Sunday. And so really focusing on the soul and reflection. This is often a day of rest for all of us because we don't want to burn out, which we talked about with the sun. Moon, Monday. Friday is Venus's day for pleasure and enjoyment. Saturday, can't forget Saturday. That is Saturn's day. So a lot of times Saturdays can be a day of hard work. It can be a day of enjoyment after a long work week, but also I like to think of it as just a day for me to reflect on all of the themes related to Saturn. So anyway, if you haven't watched those episodes, go back, jump around, re-listen. But we've got 2 more planets because there are 9. And Jyotish does not really, or traditionally, I'll say, focus on the outer planets, Uranus and Neptune and Pluto. And I know Pluto's kind of debatable, but we do focus on the 2 nodes of the moon. So if you're familiar with Western astrology, a lot of times they're called the nodes. And in our lineage and tradition, they're called Rahu, which is the head of the serpent, and Ketu, which is the tail. So I'm going to talk about these 2 together because they are so intertwined. They move at opposite ends of your chart. So when you look, and they're not actually planets, by the way. We call them that because it's just easy, but we're actually calling all of these planets grahas in Sanskrit. So graha means to grasp. And so we talk about these planets not, sometimes they can have a hold on you if you're feel like, everything's happening to you, but also they help us grasp the blueprint of our life, and they help us grasp their knowledge and wisdom so that we can have more ease in our day-to-day here on Earth. Rahu and Ketu are the places on the ecliptic. So the ecliptic is the pathway that the planets move through from our view here on Earth. And the ecliptic is also the big circle of the 12 signs. Right? The 12 signs that are always in the same order, and they always appear moving. I mean, I guess the signs don't move, but do you know what I mean? Like the signs of the zodiac that we're familiar with: Aries, Taurus, Gemini, Cancer, Leo, Virgo, Libra, etc. They're always in the same order. So like PS, if you're thinking to yourself, wow, I really want to know more about Vedic astrology, I want to get into this. My one piece of advice, there's a decent amount of just straight memorization that's going to make things easier for you. Memorize the order of the signs because they're always in the same order. There is no time when like Aries is next to Cancer in a lineup. It's always Aries, Taurus, Gemini, Cancer, Leo. I remember I learned these because I went on a hike like 3 summers ago. And a lot of times Sean's like way ahead of me and I'm dawdling. I just hike a little bit slower. And I had this little cheat sheet and I was like, I'm going to memorize these today. And it just took me back to like my college days of flashcards and whatnot. But I memorized them and I memorized the numbers that go with them because they're always the same. It's always the same order. Like Aries is number 1, Taurus is number 2, Gemini number 3, Cancer number 4. So that's kind of important too, just knowing these sacred numbers and where it appears because those numbers, yeah, I'm not going to get into it. I'm going to start to confuse you. But anyway, memorize the order of the signs. Rahu and Ketu are the places where the eclipses take place. And so eclipses, again, this is one of those things, at least for me, is slightly confusing. We have solar eclipses and we have lunar eclipses. And we'll just say these are depending on the juxtaposition of the sun and the moon in the sky. Okay? You can Google which is which. But one thing to know is that solar eclipses and lunar eclipses always come in pairs. So we've always got one following the other. So if you notice that, and we call it eclipse season because we usually have one followed by the other. That's just kind of a fun fact. And so just be aware of that. Eclipses, why are they important? So we have to go back to some of our basic knowledge of sun and moon. So the moon, remember from a long time ago, the moon is our mind. And the mind is important because the mind is an illusion. It is a part of us, of course. It is important. There's a lot that goes on in our mind, but it's not who we are. The sun represents the soul, the undying, infinite part of us. And then really the mind is this temporary thing. It waxes and wanes, just like the moon. It, just like riding the waves of your emotions. I'm sure all of you can relate to this. One day you're feeling like on top of the world. And then the next day it's like, what am I doing with my life, right? These are moods and emotions and the waves that we experience. So there's this juxtaposition. And then when one, eclipses the other, this affects life on Earth. And one of the things that makes these so powerful is we talk about eclipses and Rahu and Ketu as the planets of karma. So I like to think of them as like under the surface because they're not really talked about like mainstream wise. I feel like you really have to be into Jyotish in order to really understand them. But they're one of the first things I love to look at in someone's chart because they really talk about the underlying themes of our lives, which honestly we're not going to discover unless we're on a spiritual path, unless we're on a path of self-discovery, whether you call it, remember, semantics are a thing. So if you're like, ooh, spiritual path, that's not me. Okay, whatever. You're awakening. You're waking up and learning new things about yourself and your role in the world and why we're all here, whatever that means to you. So when we talk about Rahu, I kind of have to tell you the story, and maybe this one's going to be a little bit longer of a video, but buckle up. Rahu and Ketu, there's this story that we talk about, this very ancient story of why Rahu and Ketu are in existence. So all the planets have these origin stories. And there's this great story that has a lot of different nuances to it. A lot of different characters are connected through the story. But it's the story of the churning of the ocean of milk. Okay? There's so many symbols that I'm going to just try to keep this concise. So there was all these treasures. There's this Amrita. Okay, sweetness, this nectar. Think of it like, this nectar of immortality. This is a symbol in many, many stories and many traditions. But in India, there's the Amrita at the bottom of the ocean of milk. And we've got to churn the ocean to get the Amrita, this nectar of immortality, to rise to the surface. Somehow, there's demons and there's gods, and they realize they need to work together. And so through their connections and other nuances of the story, they get this great mountain upside down, like a little spindle, and they put this mountain upside down in the ocean of milk. And then they have this great serpent connected to this, like a kind of, if you've for my camp people out there. If you've ever seen a bow drill work, like if you're trying to create like coals for a fire, I'm doing this action with my hand, the bow drill. They use, I imagine them using this great serpent like a bow drill. So they're churning. That's the point here. You've got gods on one side, demons on the other. And it's, part of the deal that everybody is going to get to share in this. So they are churning the ocean of milk, and many things start to come up. And this great goddess Mohini arises. Mohini, I believe, was an incarnation of Vishnu, which again, another detail that I don't have time to get into. But Mohini is this great, beautiful goddess, and she comes out of the ocean of milk, and she's the one that's going to deliver the nectar of immortality. So she starts to give it to the gods, and it's kind of this like understood thing that the demons aren't going to get any. So I don't really want to talk about the unfairness of that, even though they also put in the work. It's a small detail. But if you can imagine this lineup of gods that are like, yes, ready to be immortal, give me some of this. We've worked hard for this. It's all gods in this lineup. And Mohini is like giving it out, giving it out, giving it out. And all of a sudden, everybody got some. And then all of a sudden, someone's like, wait a second, who's that? And they're like, there's a demon that made it into the lineup and drank the nectar of immortality. So Mohini is like, excuse me, what's going on? And then Mohini takes a discus, sends it over to this demon, and it slices the demon's head off. But, the demon already drank the nectar of immortality. So this became Rahu, who's the head of the serpent, because, serpent energy, lots of that here, and Ketu, which is the tail. So that's how Rahu and Ketu came to be, and that's how they became immortal. And, we give all of these cosmic events and cosmic ethereal bodies, we give them these personas so that we can better understand them. That's why it's like, why tell stories to begin with? Well, because stories help us understand. They help us break something really complex down, like this concept of God or this concept of infinity. We take that huge concept and then we break it down into stories. All traditions have stories. So Rahu and Ketu, pretty dramatic. Rahu is known as the head of the serpent, and all things Rahu are in the head. So when we look at the themes of Rahu in our birth chart or in transits that are moving through the sky, Rahu is like what we're obsessed with. It's like the thing that runs through your head over and over and over again. So it's distinct from the mind, right? The mind and the moon, this is just like the waxing and waning of your emotions and the thoughts that go through your mind, your motherly instincts and things like this. Rahu has more, there's like this quality of ambition and this quality of like, yes, I want to get that. So there can be like really powerful things that result from a Rahu transit or an interaction in your chart with Rahu. And he is what you are obsessed with in your life. So when you look at your natal chart, your birth chart, which again is different than your Western natal chart. So if you're looking at your birth chart and you're like, oh my gosh, and you're seeing this big circle broken out into like a pizza pie, that's typically a Western astrology birth chart. Not the same as what I'm talking about. Kind of the same, but different lineage, different way of looking at it. So just Google Vedic astrology birth chart. Anyway, or you can just message me and I'll help you break it down. So Rahu represents a part of our life that we're obsessed with. Like you can imagine, this is the part of our life where, maybe in a past lifetime, and again, I've talked about past lifetimes, that's something we kind of adhere to in this lineage and tradition, but you can look at that as like literal, like a past life from your soul, or like a past life from this lifetime. There was a past lifetime where I was a style editor at a women's magazine living in a city in Wisconsin. Okay. That would be a past life for me. And so maybe it was something in a past lifetime for you that you feel like you didn't get. And now you're obsessed. This is what you focus on. And this is like all in your head, right? And then on the opposite end of the spectrum is Ketu. And here's the thing, when I say the opposite end of the spectrum, Rahu and Ketu are always opposite one another. And they are always moving through the sky. They are always transiting in retrograde motion, meaning they move backward. And all the planets, for the most part, obviously not the sun or the moon, but all the planets move in retrograde motion at some point. some more than others. Rahu and Ketu are always moving retrograde. It's just how and again, they're just spots on the ecliptic, but it's how they move. And they're always exactly opposite of one another. That's just how it is. Ketu represents the body of the serpent. So Ketu has no head. And when you think of like having no head, what do you have? You have a body. You have your ability to feel. And it's like avoiding what you're obsessed with. So Ketu is often placed in a house or a part of our life where we might avoid activity related to those things. If you think about it, it's very rooted in intuition. So sometimes if you feel somewhat blocked, one might say like, oh, when someone talks about intuition and tapping into your inner knowing, if you're one of those folks that's like, what is that? I don't know what my intuition is, right? Working with Ketu can be really powerful. And Ketu, in Ketu without a head, without eyes, ears, mouth, whatever, we don't have access to all of our senses. So we really start to rely on our sixth sense, you could say. Ketu helps us tap into that inner knowing if we work with Ketu in a supportive way. It can be a powerful portal for connecting with ancestors, but Rahu works more on the plane of existence in the material world. Rahu's very much here on Earth. Now, I've explained kind of both of these. Why are they important? It's so important because this between Rahu and Ketu, is we call this the karmic axis. And they really bring in a lot of themes related to your karma. And oh my gosh, I can't even remember at this point if I've talked about karma, but brief overview of karma it's not like, oh, what goes around comes around. I mean, sort of, but like karma happens as a result of your actions, and everyone on the planet is taking action. It's like the ripples that happen. Some we're going to see the result of in our lives. Some you might see some fruit from an action that you've taken. Like maybe you get a windfall of cash, or you get a windfall of good decisions or volunteers for your organization. And then other times we'll never know how our actions impact people. And karma is this it's these scales that get balanced in the grand scheme of life. So if we, like with Ketu, if we actively avoid something in this lifetime, whether it's this, part of our life versus a future part or a past part, or whether we're thinking past lifetime, like literally the last lifetime of your soul, past lifetimes and the karma that we carry through, it's basically like if you didn't deal with it back then, you're going to deal with it now. It's the same thing, like I'm sure you can identify with this. It's like, think of a pattern, a reoccurring pattern in your life. The thing that comes up where you're thinking to yourself when it arises, you're like, geez, like I got to deal with this again. That is karma. And over time, when we move out of a cycle of karma, that just means that we see the karma arrive, or we see these circumstances arise in our life, and we think to ourselves, oh, I know this. Hello, karma. I'm going to make a different choice. Or I'm going to pause between stimulus and reaction. I'm not going to react. I'm going to act. Okay? So Rahu and Ketu represent this karmic axis. And when we think about like, oh, I'm obsessed with this thing and I avoid this thing, the true magic and wholeness in life comes when we can bring the two together. When we realize the importance of these things that we avoid, and we start to lessen our grip on expectations and deliverables and outcomes and success, as the material world describes it, when we can ease up on the obsession, and when we can pay a little bit more attention to those things we avoid, that helps us find this, it's almost like healing between this karmic axis in our chart. And there's so many other aspects. So, oh my gosh, I can't talk about this forever. So I really need to bring this back around. Like, what does this have to do with business? So, what are you obsessed with? And this, you could take this in two different ways. There's obviously things that you're obsessed with, like parts of your job that you love. I don't think I'm really talking about that. I think those are the things, those might be just natural strengths, things that you love, that light you up, that bring you into a flow state where like you lose track of time and you're like, oh my God, this is the best ever. Like this for me, like filming these things really could be that for me. Like I love it, and I could talk your ear off forever. So the things I'm actually talking about that you're obsessed with are the things that you ruminate over, the things that stick to you. And I feel like stickiness is a good way of understanding karma, because if it's truly karma that's sticky, that's the definition of it. It sticks to you. So it could be, these little things that your employees do that irk you. They just get you. And, maybe that makes you short with people, or that annoys you where you need like time to yourself. Maybe you don't like looking at your financials. I know I can speak for myself. In the beginning of my journey as an entrepreneur, financials were not something that I was really pumped about. I'm totally pumped about, this idea of spending money, I guess. But this idea of being like, how did we do? And analyzing and data and taking the time to do all the work. I was not obsessed. I guess this would be like what I avoided. So now though, I have found a way to really find my flow with financials. I see the benefit of them, and I see how avoiding them really only leads to my own destruction and my own dissatisfaction. So, okay, I just gave you an example of a Ketu situation. So those are the things you avoid. What are you avoiding about your business? What things do you like table to, I'll just put that off to next month. I'll just put that off. Because oftentimes we put these things off, but like, if we keep putting it off, it ends up being this like big scary thing in the back of your mind, this thing on your to-do list that you still haven't done, that you're just avoiding. And oftentimes it like doesn't actually take that much time to do. And so getting in that rhythm, really committing to be like, okay, no more procrastination. I am not going to put this off. And if you can't do it on your own, how are you going to get help? Someone gave me this advice in the long run. They were like, hire a bookkeeper. If you do one thing, hire a bookkeeper. And I put it off, and I muddled my way through the financials for the first few years of being in business. And then by the time I did hire a bookkeeper, she had to do way more work because she had to unravel all the mistakes that I had made. Right. And again, not mistakes, but just like horrible ways of classifying things. And I wasn't organized right. I wasn't doing journal entries right. It's just nuances that could have been avoided. And now I know better. And so for me, I have to make this, I'm talking Ketu. I transitioned. I'll come back to the Rahu obsession piece. So with Ketu, I had to really make this a sacred experience of doing financials, doing taxes, analyzing the data, making spreadsheets. And I realized I do have a lot of strengths, like minor obsessions. When you get me in a Google sheet or get me in an Excel sheet where I get to make the header and highlight cells and tables and do the sum and the average and all of this, I actually like that. I actually enjoy that. So it really took some self-reflection for me to realize, like, okay, what about this do I like? How can I focus on that? How can I remember the result of this action? Because I knew the result of looking at your numbers is just being more confident, knowing what's going on. And so that's really how I healed my own relationship with Ketu in my business. And it just honestly, knowing my numbers helped me tap into my intuition even more. So then Rahu, this stuff that I'm obsessed with, I think for me, and I'm just like reflecting on the fly here, I think for a long time, I got wrapped up in the role that I was playing. I was a yoga studio owner. And there was a certain way that looked in my head. And so when it came time to close a few studios, as I did during COVID, the leading up to that, I was in denial, obviously. And I was like, no, I'm not closing studio. I'm not going to do this. This is not how I go down. This is not how I stop being a yoga studio owner. Right. And then I did it. As soon as I made the decision to close, it was like a breath of fresh air. It's how I knew it was the right decision for me. It's how my intuition, again, arose in that very moment where as soon as I gave myself permission to say, this is the next step. I've got, for the good of this company, I need to close 2 studios. It was like, I could breathe. I cried, but I could also breathe. Also, when I made the decision to sell my studios completely and focus all of my attention in the Arctic and with my online teachings, it took me a long time to just flip the switch in my mind. It wasn't even a public thing. It was just in my mind. I was like, no, I'm going to hold on to this. This is who I am. How can I let go? And then like all of a sudden I explored like, what would it be like if I let go? And then that feeling arose again where I was like, and that's how I knew. And that's my story. Okay. So you have your story. There are going to be things that just are, and when you think of karma and Rahu and Ketu things, these are reoccurring patterns. They knock on your door over and over and over and over, especially if you don't learn the first time or second time or third time. They're going to keep coming back around. And Rahu and Ketu, where they show up in your birth chart, there's a lot of powerful symbolism with basically your role in your lifetime and what your dharma, your purpose. This is not your career. Dharma is so much deeper than the work you do, the career you do every day. Dharma is why did your soul come into this lifetime? Why did your soul get paired up with this body that is perfect, absolutely perfect for the role that you need to play in this lifetime? Why? Those are we'll call them secrets of Jyotish that just provide, in my opinion, so much depth. And I'll tell you one more thing since I have your ear. So this is just a bonus. So you've got the whole deal for the business, right? Like focus on what you avoid, focus on what you're obsessed with, and then like take a minute and see how you can ease up on the obsession and see how you can give some of that obsession to what you avoid. See if you can level out between the two. That would be my advice. And then I want to tell you one more thing, since this is the last episode and I have no idea what my next season will be about. Who knows when I'll even release it? Maybe 2 months, maybe 2 years from now. We never know. So the things that make Jyotish really special and what makes it unique as a system of astrology. Number one, these are my opinions, okay? Number one, and this is a fact, it's ancient. It's very, very old. And for my very driven Aries self, and my moon is in Scorpio, if you're curious, that gives me this really deep connection to mystical teachings, and my Aries self really wants to do things right, for better or for worse. And I love the idea of practicing a system of astrology that's been around for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. Okay. And I can't speak to other lineages of astrology because I don't study those. So I love the ancientness of it. Secondly, I love this concept of using Jyotish to shine lights in spaces of darkness. So this concept is what we call guru. So Guru, guru. Guru is someone, something, some aspect within ourselves, because we all have a guru within. Sometimes we have gurus on the outside too. This is something that shines light on something, an aspect of ourselves that's in the dark. Once we shine light on something, it has no power over us because we can see it. We fully see it. And so these teachings really allow us to look at aspects of our life, see what's going on in the cosmos, see how we might have been born with this blueprint, and see how we've evolved since then. And then also just to be aware of, like, just like you would look on the weather app on your phone, you can look at the cosmic weather. There's an app that I love. A lot of people ask me, like, okay, I don't want to be an astrologer, but how do I track this stuff? Well, you can follow people like me, but also there's this app called Align 27. It's a paid app, so it's not free, but they give a lot of really great transits in easy to understand language that show you kind of what's what, and you can enter your birth information, and it kind of gives you a little bit of forecasting for longer term transits, but also short term transits. So I really, really love that. And then within there, one of the things you'll see, and this is the other super special part of Jyotish that I am obsessed with, is nakshatras. So nakshatra is unique. You won't find this in another lineage or like Western astrology. Nakshatras are further divisions of the zodiac. So throw away these 12 signs just for a moment, right? We have the 12 signs of the zodiac. Remember, they always go in the same order. Nakshatras take the same circle, the same 360 degrees, and it divides it into 27 parts. Actually, it's 28, but that's a small detail explanation for another time. Let's just say 27. So there's 27 divisions. And these are like, it's basically like instead of 12, we get to have an option of 27 different personality types for your mind, for your, relationship with spiritual teachings, for your relationship with action, for your relationship with relationships, right? Venus and Mars and all of your planets, they are found in a specific nakshatra. So, for example, my ascendant, so the rising sign that was rising on the eastern horizon at the moment I was born, in the place that I was born, is Aries, the sign, but it was also Ashwini, the nakshatra. And Ashwini is located entirely within Aries. There's 2 other nakshatras within Aries, and then one, usually there's 2 full nakshatras in each of the signs, and then there's one nakshatra that kind of borders between the 2. This is just the difference. This is like 27 versus 12. If you kind of look, if you can imagine like 2 pizza pies superimposed, one with 12 pieces, one with 12 slices, and one with 27, right? They won't quite fit. It's not like 3 nakshatras per sign. The division doesn't quite work out. So there's like 2 and some change of each nakshatras. And it's basically a way of taking Aries, which is a big theme, right? A big sign, and dividing it a little bit into 2 and some change pieces. And then the crazy thing is that in a nakshatra, there's actually 4 additional pieces. And that's called Navamsha. So the depth, this is what I'm getting at here. When people are like, oh, yeah, sure, read my chart. I can look at your chart and give you like a couple little, like, this is a snippet I see, this is something I see, this is something I see. But when I truly read someone's full Vedic astrology chart, this is like, minimum 4 hours. Minimum. Like, I could honestly spend 10 hours. And the first time my friend Nancy originally told me, I was like, oh yeah, can we meet up tomorrow? And she was like, oh no, in order to read your chart, I'm going to need days. This is going to take me over 10 hours. And I remember thinking to myself, maybe I know she's new to this. Maybe it just takes more time when you don't. No. How naive I was. There are so many things to work through because I'm looking at relationships between planets. Like, certain planets are friends with each other, certain planets are associated with different elements, and then certain nakshatras are associated with other different planets. And it's a whole system of patterns and synergies and dissonance and, oh my gosh. And then the crux of it all, what I love so much, are the stories. So all of these nakshatras are, I think, for the most part, discussed in the Vedas, which, again, super cool to me how old these stories are. Just the idea of them being told for thousands and thousands of years, that's really cool. It's a really cool concept. I like being part of something like that. And the stories help us understand these. And for me, that's what makes Jyotish so special. There's one other thing that's cool. It's called the Dasha system. And I'm just going to tell you about it so you can Google it if you want, or you can ask me about it. The Dasha system is based upon where the moon was when we were born. There's all these calculations that I put into a computer program to figure out. But essentially, the dasha system is like, I like to think of this as like our soul as we go through life. It's like our soul being in grade school. Like if grade school spanned our entire life, remember in grade school when you basically have like one homeroom teacher, like you have one teacher that's teaching you for like a whole year, and you really, it's not like you in high school where you go from this class to this class and you have all these teachers. It's like grade school. So if we looked at our whole life and say we were in grade school forever, and instead of being with a teacher for just 1 year, we're with different teachers, some for like 7 years. And then another teacher, like the moon, we're with for 10 years. Ketu is who we're with for 7 years. And we're with Venus for 20 years. We're with Saturn for 19 years. And so there are all these teachers that we move through. And the teachers, the planets, the way we move through the dashas, they're always in the same order. It makes it easy. But all of us start somewhere different. So we don't always all start together in moon or sun or whatever. Depending on where our moon is in our birth chart, that determines our dasha cycles. And so we move through this is kind of like having one primary teacher in your chart, in your life. And you go through a certain amount of years with this teacher, and it just breaks our life out into themes. And I just really love that. I came to this knowledge and knowing when I was when I was transitioning into my Ketu dasha. Ketu dasha is a very short, I think it's the shortest dasha cycle. It's, if you think of Ketu, which we just talked about, these themes of avoidance, of loss, right? Loss of a head, of feeling and intuition. A lot of times Rahu and Ketu are associated with sudden changes. And also a little bit of chaos, right? If you can imagine walking around without a head on, that's pretty chaotic. So a lot of chaos did happen during my Ketu period. And I also did a lot of foreign traveling. I traveled to India for the first time, second time, and third time during my Ketu dasha. And Ketu is often this planet of foreign travels, of foreign ideas and learning far away from where you were born, where you grew up. So it was really cool to know that, to understand that while I was in it. And then oftentimes at the end of our Ketu dasha, there's a little bit of there can be a little bump in the road. And anytime we're shifting between these dashas, it's kind of like, hopping from one teacher to the next teacher. You look back and you're like, oh, I miss my last teacher. I got so comfortable there. And you're like, who is this new teacher? What are they even trying to tell me? It's learning the rhythm, having the new supplies, going into a different scenario. Those are your dashas. And there's the Mahadasha, there's your primary teacher. And then in true Jyotish fashion, there's also sub-teachers. Within a Mahadasha cycle, there's these second layer, and then there's a third layer and a fourth layer. So that's kind of having like teacher's assistants come in while the main teacher is also there. You have a teacher's assistant that comes in every few months or few years. Oh, there's just so much depth. So if you're still listening, like, hey, thank you so much for being here. I truly hope you have enjoyed this season. I'd love to hear from you. So don't forget, you can go to my website, mollybusby.com. You'll find all of my contact info there. You can reach out. There's no team behind the website. It's literally just me. So if you reach out, you're going to be hearing back from me personally. And yeah, I would also take suggestions for my next season. Like, what about the yogic teachings are you wanting to hear more of, especially as it relates to business and how we show up in the world? So anyway, hope you're having a great day. And if you're dragging your feet on a project that's taking you a really long time, I want you to know that there's no time like the present to get her done. Thanks for being here, everybody. Signing off. Until next time.